Welcome, everybody, to the Enterprise Marketer Podcast. Before we get started with Andrea Ames, today I want to talk to you about the Intelligent Content Conference, where you can see people like Andrea Ames speak, and it's in Vegas and usually in March. What's awesome about the show and these podcasts is you can actually get the content on demand right now through the Content Marketing Institute by going to the link in the show notes and checking it out. The price is amazing and the content is even better. So I highly suggest you guys take it out, and I hope you enjoy this podcast with Andrea Ames from IBM. Well, we are here at the Intelligent Content Conference, and I am so excited to talk to another geek like me. And I have Andrea Ames here from IBM. And so tell us a little bit about your role at IBM.
Sure. Thanks for having me. First of all, this is very cool. My first podcast.
Yeah.
So my role at IBM is kind of interesting. I actually started out at IBM as a content strategist in a product area, the information management space, which is databases and enterprise content management, and essentially worked on the technical content strategy. So working primarily with documentation folks, but to some degree with education, training folks, and support folks, and partnering more with marketing folks on the products. And went from there after about 10 years into more of a corporate-wide role. And I spent 3 or 4 years as the enterprise content experience strategist. Long, complicated title. And essentially what I and my team did is we set this content strategy, again, primarily for the technical content space. So technical, post-sales, there's a lot of overlap there, but kind of documentation, again, training, support, and did much closer partnership with marketing because at that point in time, I'm going to say 2011, 2012, 2013, of course, content marketing was, really becoming a big thing. And, my perspective has always been that the way you retain customers is with a great product and content experience after the sale. And I think the content, the post-sales content or the technical content can be awesome from a thought leadership perspective and from an enticement perspective, if you will, in customer acquisition and actually purchase. And so got into this job, and most of what I did, obviously there was the strategy setting, as I mentioned, but most of what I did was really enable those content teams. And so I had a small team of content strategists, and we basically did everything but technology. So we did content strategy, design, development, experience design for content, culture and career path development, incentive development. So all kinds of things really supporting those technical content creators. And most recently, in the last 8 months or so, my job and my team's job has changed, and we've actually become internal consultants. One of the things that we learned actually early on in the enablement game, if you will, is that content strategy in particular is really hard. And it can be really hard. It's something that I think the best folks have really learned it in the trenches. They've got a lot of experience. They've tried a lot of different things. They've failed a lot, and they've come out smelling like a rose on the other side. And so we essentially put together an apprenticeship model. And so we go out on product teams. We do knowledge transfer. We actually do content strategy for the product area. And we help build those capabilities and skills on the product teams and work with those teams to create not just content strategists and content strategy, but unified content strategy. So we really promote this idea that it's not all about technical content. It's not all about marketing content. There's such a seamless experience that needs to happen there that, we really have to be thinking about it all as one. So kind of that's sort of the general phases of my career at IBM. Which is really
unique to think about, because before we started, we were talking about like the tech companies that I was involved with. And now we think of Amazon, we think of Alexa. We think of Microsoft now, we think of Cortana. We think of Apple, we got Siri. And then IBM, we think of Watson. And so if you could think of your technical or you're sales or you're now with IBM marketing, with this new marketing community that they're building, the voice of Watson to be across those. And it's a human voice, and it's an approachable voice, and it's definitely not the traditional IBM voice. It's not the white paper that goes out and sells cloud to enterprises that have other IBM stuff, right? It's not the giant hard drive coming into your AS400 or anything like that, right? This is something that is real human now, and the technologies and the integration, like you talked about, the investment into IBM usually happens in one piece, and then after that, more and more pieces attach. And because it is such a big ecosystem that works well together, that post-sales content and the enablement and the understanding of the ecosystem and then your business ecosystem, so important. Because once you become a brand, like affiliated with a brand in technology, it's the more and more of that you get.
Right, exactly. Well, it's interesting because as you mentioned, the voice of Watson and this whole idea of becoming more human, I think that's a really clear beneficial outcome to, I think, not just the integration we've had with marketing across marketing and technical content, but also the expectations of the market, is that our technical content is also becoming more human. I don't know if you knew this, but I don't remember when the statistic comes from, so I probably should have looked that up before we started talking. But IBM used to be the second largest publisher in the world after the US government. And so we would create just shelves and shelves and shelves of documentation. A lot of it was based on that documentation, and very dry, instructions and so on. And
very minimal design, only like the blue IBM logo in the corner, a bold font on the top, and then open it up and it's like textbook.
Very minimal design, very dry, direct, instructional stuff. This was not something
reference
you were going
to
reference material, a lot of reference material. Yeah. And so we've evolved as our clients' expectations have evolved, and also as we have been thinking more and more and driving more and more toward that seamless experience across the customer journey, and thinking about how customers now with cloud, with Watson, our customers are engaging with us before they buy. They're engaging with our content, technical content. They're seeing the information in the user interface, for example, which typically is written or heavily influenced by what would traditionally be called a technical writer. So this is not someone who's writing marketing content typically. And we have really grown and changed our approach to content. We've gotten much more conversational. We've got yikes and we've kind of taken cues from all of the error messages and that sort of thing. We're not probably as informal as you would see in Chrome or Google or even Microsoft, I think. However, we're getting a lot more friendly, a lot more conversational, and I think there's a lot of things driving that. Like I said, cloud and the interaction with our customers before they buy, the expectation of those customers, the Watson influence is the conversation concept. I mean, it's really more than just a content idea. It's more than just an approach to how that voice might come out. It's an experience, right? The conversation becomes the experience, and the content is such a crucial part of that. So, I think it's super exciting. Yeah. First of all, I mean, it really, I think IBM tries very hard to be, come across as an open, friendly company. And I think the conversations we have, the stories we tell, the way we tell those stories, the way we lead a customer through the experience of the product, all of that ties into whatever expectation or perception that the customer walks away with. So really important role that everyone who creates content and who is contributing to that voice plays in IBM.
Did you know 70% of Twitter users watch videos found in their newsfeed? Here's a tip. Use visuals in your tweets. People are 3 times more likely to engage with a tweet that includes a video. Create short, visually entertaining videos to grab your followers' attention in their timelines. Quickly and easily publish videos to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at once with Brightcove Social. Learn more at brightcove.com.
And you mentioned Microsoft because that was a fun one that I was, I got to be a part of. I was an XML MVP, and so when I was 21, there was me and 7 other people, and I still remember going to a conference and we were at the airport, and Tim Bray from Sun, one of the creators of XML, is there, and I'm like just fanboyed out, and we geeked out. But we were trying to change the reference guide at that point. When you would open up Visual Basic or C#, you would get a book, and it would be a white book, and it would just be reference guide and very dry. And so we launched a blog community for finding your voice. And the whole idea was behind the MVP award was content sharing and community.
Right.
And so we built in a lot of how do you find your voice? How do you create a rhythm? How do you develop content on a regular basis so that you could be seen and known and share?
Right.
And Microsoft started to then come to us and talk to us about how do we change our voice, because it was like Microsoft was dry and boring, and but the stuff that they wanted to, the people they wanted to reach didn't want to read dry and boring anymore. Right. And so they then had to change their style. And it's fun to see IBM take that on, and they've done a very good job in the IBM marketing place to make a very well designed and content rich and released on a regular basis. Right. You don't feel like you're on an IBM site. You kind of look around like, did somebody hack IBM and put up a really nice designed website?
Right.
And so it's great to see that. So what are some of the cool things that you're excited to see as you guys move forward and put new pieces of content out?
Well, great question, which I was just going to answer without you even asking it. You mentioned, well-designed marketing experience.
I have Watson in my head,
Watson implant. When you talk about a well-designed marketing experience and so on, I think what we're really experiencing at IBM, and what a lot of companies are trying to do, is break down those silos and bring all the constituent components of an experience together, not just from a marketing perspective, not just from a product perspective, but across that journey. And so you may know that 4 or 5 years ago, IBM launched a very big design-focused approach within the company. And we've always had very strong user experience, design, and so on. But it became even more focused. Phil Gilbert and the IBM design team is, huge. They're like the rock stars of design now.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
It is very cool. And I think having a strong design focus, a strong content and content marketing focus, the technical content community really looking to change to get into that more conversational tone, being out there all the time in the cloud, having people experiencing our products and experiencing IBM digitally. All these things are kind of creating, I think, a perfect storm of really making more people much more focused on the experience. Robert talked about, maybe not being quite so focused on strategy and very focused on execution. And of course, execution is very strong in IBM. We need to deliver stuff, right? But I think there's very much a focus on, are we doing the right thing? Are we designing the right experience? The designers that I work with are super, super talented and always pushing on, are we doing the right thing? Do we know enough about this user? Have we gone back and talked to our users and validated this stuff, et cetera? And so it's fantastic. Coming up, I'm a relative old timer. I'm not going to tell you my age, but back in the day before most of our documentation was online, the documentation folks, got into this whole push on let's put our stuff online. And that's going to be better. Customers hate our documentation. It's going to be better if we put it online. And this idea that documentation is something that customers are coming to our products to interact with was a little insane. They don't come to read the doc. And if they hated it in print, they're not going to like it any better just because you crammed it online, right? And it's a lesson our industry has gone through and learned. And it really kind of begs that whole discussion across silos about, is the product actually the right product? Is it delivering the right thing? Is it well designed? Is it intuitive enough? Does the documentation augment that, as opposed to screaming, type your name in the name field, right, to our customers? That's, not good documentation, high value content that's really supporting that experience. So for me, the whole experience focus is so huge, and it's really funny because you see that in every aspect of our audience. They talk about, what do people want, right? When we talk about how do we incent people to be better workers, what are people looking for in life? I mean, everywhere what you're seeing is experience. It's not about money. It's not about, finding, having more of something. It's about having experiences. And I think that, Robert again this morning said, if we can tie in to making that content elicit more emotion from our audience, there's huge power in that. And that's what our customers want. They want to feel things. They want to experience things. They don't want to be, talked at. They don't want to be told things. They don't want to have a mound of stuff thrown at them. Mm-hmm. So I'm most excited about that experience side. I've actually been calling myself a content experience person for, I'm going to say 8 or 9 years anyway. And before that, strategic information architect, where I saw my job as creating the experience, not the content itself. And so I think that's a huge, very positive shift in all of those industries. More design focus, more looking at the experience of marketing, more looking at the experience across the journey, and more looking at how that technical content contributes into that whole.
Yeah. One of the things I've been really passionate about is, when I was a full-time developer and building developer communities, I disliked the designers and I disliked the marketers. It was just a thing. It was like they were the ones who never understood why it took so long.
Yeah.
And they assumed it should be easier. And then you quickly realize that
it's a simple matter of programming,
if
right?
people just don't understand what you do, they assume it's an easy job. And so when you just see this unified front around the persona, like designers need personas, the UX folks need personas, the developers need personas. They need to know who's clicking the button.
Yes.
And marketers need personas, and marketers are the ones that are supposed to know who the customer are. So they're the ones that are best fit to then work with the UX people to get the good testing, to get the good responses, and work with the developers to understand why we need the stuff we need from a back end so they can then put it out front.
Right.
But the marketers aren't necessarily the most passionate people about learning their craft and doing stuff like designers and developers are. So there's this critical need for marketers to want to have a hobby of reaching people. And once they do, then you're going to see this utopia, and I call it the Voltron, right? You're going to have UX and dev and marketing kind of turn into this beast that will then be able to go and effectively reach customers. And it's all around that experience.
Well, and what I love about that picture that you just created is content is, in my mind, the thread that holds that whole ball together. And there are content people in marketing, and there are content people on the development side. Our technical writers are developers, essentially. There are content people from a design perspective. You've got copywriting and writing in the user interface. And you gain that experience, or you create that experience that our customers gain through the conversation with that content and the relationship that you build, right? That experience starts out that relationship in Discover and carries it all the way through actually acquiring that customer, retaining that customer, and hopefully getting that customer advocating for you. I mean, you want that experience to be exceptional. You want somebody out there saying, holy cow, I need Watson, or whatever your product is. That's super, super important. And I personally, I may be biased. I think content is a huge and super important part of that, especially as that conversation goes more and more digital. We've seen looking at the data, because we've spent a lot of time in the last 5 to 8 years trying to figure out what is the impact of technical content on the pre-sales part of the cycle. And we know our customers, anywhere from 80 to 95% of them are developing their perception of IBM through technical content. They're making purchase decisions through technical content. They're evaluating our products and determining whether they think they're high quality or not through our technical content. And that's not just documentation, it's support content, because of course all that's out there. And so as we have evaluated that, we're also seeing the sales conversation is going digital. I mean, every company now has a digital organization or somebody who's focused on that digital conversation. And as we remove people and human interaction from that conversation, the content has to pick up that slack, and it has to do more. I mean, you and I can sit here and I can see your facial expressions and I can see you nod. Content doesn't nod. Content doesn't have a facial expression, right? I hope we're not going to get into too many emojis in our conversations with customers. And so there's a really strong responsibility on content. And I think that cries out for people who are very skilled in that area, who have deep content experience, whether it's marketing or design or technical content, whatever part of the experience or spectrum that is. Those content people, need to have those deep content skills and need to be able to bring that conversational quality, that relationship to the party. And I think, then you get magic, as you were saying, right? You get the functions together, they're talking to one another, they all have the same goal in mind, to have this fantastic experience. The content people are there, and the content is supporting that experience end to end. And then you get that beautiful relationship, and you hopefully get people, on Twitter and wherever else they are, talking about your products and how fantastic they are and how great your customer support is and how much they love the relationship with your company, right? And that's really the most important thing. I'd much rather hear our customers talking about how fantastic IBM is than how great an individual product is. Because once you have that relationship, the product part is easy, right? I mean, once they love you, then you can start talking about how your products can actually help them make a difference in their business. But that's really the conversation that you want to be having, not here, buy my product, right? You want to have now I know you, I know your problems. Let me talk about how this product or that product can actually help you in your business and make you money or get you a better relationship with your customers or, whatever the product is about. So I think that's I love content for that reason.
And it's exciting.
We're so cool and important.
I was in a session a couple years back, and there was an IBM speaker there, and they were talking about white papers, and they would release a white paper. It would take 6 months to develop, and it took they didn't get a lot of views on it, or they didn't get a lot of ROI or traction on it. And I kind of raised my hand and go, how do you know? Because as a cloud person, if I've invested in tech, then I'm not just throwing that out because of cloud. We don't adopt technology like marketers do in IT, right? It takes a while. And so I could print that white paper, and it's a map sitting on my desk for the journey I'm getting ready to have. 6 months later, I may flip through that and start to highlight stuff. You're not going to get any data on the highlight, right? You're not going to get any data on the effectiveness of that. And then I'm going to go through all these different steps, and someone's going to talk to me, and but I use the map the whole time. And that's what kind of drives through the journey. So I think as content strategists, as content experience people, we have to look at individual pieces of content as different guides and maps and markers. And we can't say, well, because they didn't get down the road, we need to remove the stop sign, right? Or we need to remove the yield or whatever. That all these pieces put together that journey.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the measurement of the effectiveness of content, depending on how you actually define that, is probably one of the biggest magical parts of content from my perspective, and not easy to do. In fact, we talk about content metrics and analytics and so on within IBM from more of a recipe kind of perspective or an interaction kind of perspective. You can't really take page views and use that for anything. Not anything substantial. Yes, we had 1 million people look at that. Well, especially on the technical content side, what does that mean?
Yeah.
If I had 1 million people looking at my documentation, does that mean my documentation is New York Times bestseller worthy? Exactly. Or does that mean my product is perhaps not so good?
Or was the customer service looking at the internet instead of the intranet?
Exactly. So it's really a matter of taking a bunch of different things into account. What's really nice is that now because we have the silos breaking down, and we have people who are analysts who are looking at, for example, marketing content. Our marketing side, hugely instrumented. It's fantastic. Our technical content side, we're catching up. What's nice is we can, on the cloud side, we can take a look at what's happening with marketing right into the product, right? We can get data about what parts of the product they're using, what tasks they're accomplishing, that sort of thing. And then we can say, well, how does the content we created, for example, for a while we had, in information management, we had this idea of an evaluation guide. And it essentially took all the marketing claims and it matched it with a tour, a little mini tour. And so when you downloaded and tried the product, this was back in the day of downloads, you could get this evaluation guide and you could actually see, well, are the marketing claims backed up in the product? And people could go through that. Well, now we've got little tours in the cloud products, and you can look at a tour and see, well, how do I do this thing or that thing, right? These different tasks. Nicely, we can see, did you go through the task? And did you actually use the content to go through the task? If you got through the task successfully and didn't use the content, okay, that might tell us something. If you got through the task successfully and you used the content, that might tell us something. If you couldn't get through the task and didn't use the content, that could tell us something. So as we start to actually compile a more three-dimensional picture of what's actually happening interaction-wise with the content and the accomplishment of particular milestones within the product, we can actually start to talk about, well, was that tour A or B or C, were they actually effective? Did they actually get the user to the next step? And we may identify, well, these are the 10 things we think a user needs to do in trial to be successful enough to feel like they should buy the product or they should subscribe. So we can start looking at that, and we can also start looking at post-sales nurture. So email and in-product nurture through the cloud products is really big, right? Content is not an IBM thing. Nurture is crazy out of control in a great way, because I think customers really love that. And so we're starting to look at how does that look on the back end when we start talking about retention. Because when you've got a cloud customer, you're acquiring them every month.
Yes.
Right? I mean, you've got to be on top of it. And they don't want to hear about features and benefits anymore. They're doing stuff. So we need to know, what did you do last month? What can we tell you about? What new features do we have? What new tours do we have? What new ways can we tell you about how our product is going to continue to give you value in your business? And that's like this weird hybrid-y marketing technical content thing, right? Normally, we'd be the people to be documenting features and telling people how to use the product, but it also has to be presented in a way that's nurturing, right? So I think there's a super interesting and exciting career space there for both marketing and technical content people in this kind of post-sales nurture space. It's kind of my little hot button inside IBM right now. I think it's super fantastic. And we often on the technical content side don't have an easy way to directly demonstrate our impact on revenue. But I think if you're creating nurture content and you're able to, correlate what you're doing in some way with retention, then you've got a really good story, which we'd like to have, right? We don't want to be a cost center. We want to be contributing to revenue. We want people to understand how what we're doing is valuable to our customer, and it's increasing the business value of the products, right, to our customers. So,
and there are groups that are being disrupted, and entire pay schedules that are being disrupted, with sales being commission based on net new for so much stuff. That cloud doesn't allow for that. Partner programs that are commission based, that now once it's sold, right, how do they keep them on a platform, or are they even incentivized to keep them on the platform?
Right.
And there's so many questions being asked where that it's going to take a bigger conversation. It's going to take the role that, we've always made fun of, like calling it the CXO for the C-suite, but the real chief experience officer to put these things together and to say, okay, we need to start empowering sales to have, when customers stay on board, that they get incentivized. When you have marketing teams say, look, your full cycle, we're not going to look at ROI just from leads to sales, but we're going to look at from, ongoing month-to-month contributions and just like there's a bigger conversation that
There
needs to
is.
happen over this
There
next
is.
half a decade.
And it's really a business-wide conversation, as you're suggesting. And I think what's super interesting to see is bigger companies like IBM and Microsoft and I mean, even Google, while it's newer, is still, a really big company, how they're adapting, changing, moving really quickly to, try to accommodate that and develop the experiences their customers want to have and live up to their customers' experiences while still being able to have some level of business model in place, right? And actually do business and pay people and so on. I mean, it's a very, I don't envy our executives. It's a very exciting time, I think, to be an executive, especially in a bigger, older, more established company. But it's super cool. I mean, if you're into reinvention and so on, man, just get out of the way. It's full speed ahead for a lot of people.
Well, thank you for your time today. And I know we could have probably 8 more of these shows.
We could. It's crazy.
Yeah. But I know you got a session to get ready for. And so love to have you back on soon. And maybe we'll be able to come see what goes on at IBM.
That would be great. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching the podcast. And I can't wait to have you guys see us at either Content Marketing World or one of the Intelligent Content Conferences, something from CMI. These guys are great. They've worked with us this whole time that we've been starting Enterprise Marketer. And if you are interested in going to Content Marketing World, we have a promo code. You can see it in the show notes or on the screen. And that will get you $100 off and also get you into some of the cool events that we'll be doing with the Content Marketing Institute and then also some of our sponsors for the event. So I hope to see you at Content Marketing World. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show. Remember, 5-star ratings mean everything to us on iTunes. It's the only podcast directory that really matters now. So if you could take a moment and go share your thoughts about the podcast and give us that 5-star review, it really helps. And then if you want to join our marketing list and kind of get part of the community, maybe even become a contributor. We'd love to have you just join the email list. You can either text marketer to 66866 or go to the website and join right there. And so glad to have you back as part of this podcast, and I hope to see you guys soon.